It's Bella, but you can call me Mrs. Whiskers. My daddy wanted me to let you know this was recorded back in the beginning of May. So some movies that are out now may not be on it now. Anyways, he proudly presents and wanted me to announce the top 5 best films of 2022 so far. Extreme Crossover Showcase! Yay!
Hello, darling, it's Elsa here. And I wanted to warn you of the spoilers in this ranking. Honestly, darling, you're so lucky to have me. You're lucky, and you're lucky. We're all lucky! Mr. FLIXTER. Hello, world. It's Mr. FLIXTER, and I just love talking motion pictures.
Today, I have a very special episode. Today is our crossover episode with Josh from Josh Does Movies. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring him on and we're going to compare our top 5 movies of the year so far. So, let's just bring you in here. How you doing, Josh?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing, Mr. FLIXTER?
I'm doing great, thanks.
Yeah, no, I've gotten a chance to see a lot of movies this year. I've seen a lot of good stuff. I've seen a lot of iffy stuff, but I was happy to hear you reach out and you want to talk about each of our own personal kind of top 5s at the moment. Where a lot of movies have came out so far, and it's kind of nice coming out of the pandemic. Finally, they have like a consistent flow of films throughout. So I've been enjoying going to the movies this year so far.
Yeah, me too. There's been a good variety too. Like a lot of different kinds of films are coming out. So there's something for everybody, really.
Seeing a very, very wide range of movies throughout. And it's kind of nice that we aren't just getting the same niche blockbuster kind of being put out, like we saw, I think, last year with the pandemic a little bit.
So why don't we start with your number 5? What do you have there?
So at number 5, this was a toss-up between 2 movies, but the one that I ended up watching it this week and that I liked just a little bit better was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. The Lionsgate comedy that's kind of a meta comedy with Nick Cage and Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the movie with the really great chemistry those 2 characters had. I thought it was kind of refreshing in different types of a way. It has some areas that I think it was weak, that keeps it, lower on my, my list and more of the middle pack so far. But I think Nick Cage and especially Pedro Pascal just have a terrific performance in it. And I had a really great time. It wasn't too long of a movie. It was a perfect in and out style comedy.
That's awesome. I'm really glad you liked it. I haven't had a chance to see that one yet, unfortunately, but I did see your review for it, like your video for it, and it does look really good. And I love Nicolas Cage, so I am looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I say if anybody is a Cage fan out there and you like Nicolas Cage movies, this is definitely gonna be one I think you're gonna enjoy a lot. But what was your number 5 movie?
My number 5 was Turning Red. It was a Disney Plus original. Originally, well, like we saw previews for it last year, maybe even a couple of years ago. It was supposed to come out in theaters, but with a lot of Pixar movies, for some reason, they're just releasing them straight to Disney Plus now. Like ever since Onward, I think that was the last one to come out in theaters. But anyways, this was a really good film because it works on a lot of different levels. And I like what you said about the bad guys in your video about animation, because a lot of it is just aimed toward kids and people just kind of write it off and think it's just a kids movie. You know what I mean? When there's so much to a lot more of these movies than that, especially with Turning Red, because it deals with puberty and turning from a child to an adult, and it's something that every kid has to go through. So I'm surprised like a movie like this hasn't been made yet. So I thought it was really well done, and bonus points for it being in Toronto because I'm Canadian. So I think this is the first Pixar movie to take place in Canada. So that's awesome.
Oh, for sure. I really enjoyed Turning Red, and I know Disney has been putting the Pixar movies on Disney Plus as kind of like content fillers, but I'm hoping with Lightyear and stuff that starts change, because Pixar has released so many great movies over the years. They're probably the studio that has the best success rate overall of quality pictures for everybody. And yeah, I agree. I think Turning Red is a great film and something touches a very different topic while being entertaining for kids, but also very engaging for adults. And like you said, I talked about that a bit in my Bad Guys review, but yeah, that's a great pick for number 5. I kind of forget about the streaming movies because when I make my lists and stuff, I'm keeping it to like my theatrical stuff. But Turning Red is definitely a movie that deserves to be in a top list of anything.
Oh, well, thank you. But yeah, the animation too, I gotta say that too. The animation's incredible. I think this is one of the best animated films for them so far because it looks so different. They combine like the anime style with like the cartoonish, like Saturday morning cartoon kind of feel. And I thought it was really successfully done. I really like how the film looks overall, like in general.
Yeah, I think we're getting a bit of a evolution of animation at the moment. It feels like a little like instead of just bland 3D model CGI that we've had probably for the last 20 some years, we're seeing more of a mixture of 2D and 3D blends that for some reason or not, it makes it look more of a painted and a lot more of a nuanced feeling to it that I personally have been enjoying in a lot of properties. So I was excited to see Pixar have something similar like that. But it definitely feels like animation is, computerized or whatever is taking the next step, that they're finding ways to give the artist back that visual flair that they might have been missing in a 3D model landscape.
Yes, I agree with that completely. So let's go on to your number 4. What did you pick?
This is going to be a movie that I really, really enjoyed, but it just went a little bit too long. It was on the cusp of being a perfect movie for me, and that is The Batman.
Okay.
The Batman is a movie I very much enjoyed because I thought it told a very gripping story in a different way we haven't seen before. With Batman itself, he's been reincarnated so many times. I know you have multiple Batman reviews in here of different Batmans. But I thought the story they were telling was very, very well done, and how they were using the Riddler as kind of like a catalyst of Batman himself and what was going on. I really, really liked. For me, the reason why the movie doesn't get to the higher status where my top 3 movies are is I think it hits a point where it goes about 25-30 minutes too long, and it puts itself into a third act that feels like a generic superhero at third act, which the movie just didn't need, and it wasn't the movie, the story it was trying to tell. But I'm not going to take away the first, no, it wasn't even bad action or anything. It's just, again, for me, it was still jarring because you have such a perfectly made movie for 2 hours and 15 minutes that the final 30 is like, well, that was still really, really great, but man, it wasn't as good as that other stuff. But yeah, no, the Batman came in at number 4, and it's kind of holding up there strong. I wasn't sure how it hold up as I see more and more movies throughout the year, but I'm happily surprised that it's staying up there currently pretty high.
That's awesome. I'm glad you liked it. It's probably no surprise to you, but I wasn't a fan. But I do appreciate your perspective and the reasons why you like it. I can see how it could appeal to people. It just wasn't really for me. But if you want to hear more about it, I got a whole video about that.
Definitely, yeah. People should go check that out. It's a great review.
All right, so my number 4 is an independent film. It's called Underneath, and little did I know when I reviewed this for horrorbuzz.com that I was actually one of the first critics to get a chance to see it. So it's kind of a funny story. The director, well, there's 2 directors. After my review got published, they reached out to me, and then they asked me if they could use my a quote from my review for the poster. So I'm like, oh my God. And then they told me how I was one of the first people. So I'm like, whoa, really? I didn't even know. And I generally like this film. It was really good. It's an anthology. So it's 4 different stories. I think it's 5 different stories. But anyways, it's all connected with these different vignettes. And it's all about different paranormal experiences that have to do with demons. There's a demon in this guy's house. That's how it starts off. It's in his basement. And then it starts showing them different stories. And then by the end, it all connects together. And it's so good. Just the way they shot it. It's a very artistic film. It's not your average kind of anthology film. So if you like films like Creepshow, that's one of the big ones, right? But there's other stuff like Southbound. That's more artistic. Even the VHS movies, those get a little bit more artistic sometimes. Or ABCs of Death, for example. I don't know if you've seen that one. But it's very similar to those, but more like an A24 film. It's kind of a slow pace, but each film stands out on its own for its own reasons. You know what I mean? It's just oh, it was really good, and I'm really glad because this causing a lot of buzz in the film festival circuits now. So I'm really excited to see the progress of this going on.
You said it's called The Underground? Is that what you said it was?
No, it's called Underneath. It's not available yet
Underneath.
for streaming, but it's supposed to be available for streaming soon. But it will be available for streaming, people. It will be. You will be able to see it.
Well, I would look forward to seeing that once it comes out. That sounds like a great different style to movies in general, let alone just the horror genre in a way.
Underneath, like I really recommend. It's so good when it's available.
All right,
Anyway.
sounds. There you go. No, Phil, thank you. No, that was something that you've seen that I haven't had a chance to even hear about yet. So that excites me for something else I get to see down the line.
Awesome. So what's your number 3?
So number 3 is the animated movie, and I know it came out globally last year, but it came out in the US at the beginning of January, called Belle.
Okay.
It is the Japanese anime that takes a virtual world approach and kind of loosely applies Beauty and the Beast to it per se. It's the main character is a teenager in Japan who kind of is suffering from depression, and her dad are struggling in life, communicating and moving forward after the death of her mother when she was a child. The animated world that she makes her own avatar in and goes into is kind of the first place she feels like she can be herself, which includes some beautiful animation and songs that I personally still listen to when I'm driving to work every now and then. It was a really beautiful film. A lot of people might say it was a Beauty and the Beast remake in some way, but it just uses the core concept of Beauty and the Beast and tells a completely different story from that. It just takes that little like storybook narrative in the middle. But the movie truly is about other stuff and people kind of discovering who they are and getting a positive feel on who they are as a person. I thought it was a great coming of age style animated movie that really touched upon some pretty dark topics, as you went throughout the movie. And it surprised me with how just much it sat with me in theater and after the theater. So it's one that I think is going to be coming to streaming and DVD purchase and everything. And if you haven't checked it out when that comes out and you like animated style movies, but especially Japanese anime style, movies and shows, I think it's one that people should check out and I think they'd really enjoy.
That sounds awesome. I love anime, and the way that you describe it, that sounds really fascinating. I haven't seen anything about that until I saw your video about it. And ever since then, I've been trying to see if it's been playing locally, but it didn't come out like around here, like in theaters. So I have to wait for it to stream, and I'm looking forward to it because it does look awesome.
No, I think it got lucky because it did a very, very small limited release in the US. And I live in Boise, Idaho here, which is like the biggest city in Idaho. So I have a theater that generally gets the very small limited release type stuff.
That's awesome.
But if you don't have like that type of movie, I don't know if this would have shown in the theaters, which again, for me was I feel kind of bad about, but I really enjoyed that. But what is your number 3 movie so far this year?
My number 3 is Sonic 2. I was a huge Sonic fan growing up as a kid, and I thought the first movie was all right. Like, it wasn't perfect, but it could have been a lot worse. Like, there's a lot of plot holes in that. Like, I didn't get why that was the whole road trip movie when it's based on a character based on speed. And there's even a point when he like runs to the ocean and back in like 5 seconds. So it's like, really, you couldn't just. Anyways, the second movie takes everything that you loved from the first movie and then just gives you more of it. And I thought that was so cool because it's actually a Sonic and Tails adventure. And that's what I was really hoping for the first one. And then I wasn't expecting Knuckles until I started seeing him in the previews. And that was a nice surprise too. And I like Idris Elba in the role. I thought he was really good in the role. And just the way that they wrote him, like, he kind of reminded me of Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, totally, because he took everything so literally. But yeah, I just thought it was a good story too, because it actually involved more aspects of the video game. And if you're a fan of the game, there's a lot of different references that they put in there. Like he uses the bubble to breathe underwater and stuff like that. There's a lot of little touches, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I really like, it was a nice surprise. And Jim Carrey's performance, oh, I'd be amiss if I didn't talk about that, because it's supposed to be his last performance, so to speak. But you never know. This movie's making a lot of money, so if he doesn't come back for part 3, there's going to be a lot of angry fans.
Yeah, no. I loved Sonic when I went in there and I saw it. It definitely is just outside my top 5, but I think that's just because I've seen so many movies so far. But it was definitely one that I really enjoyed. I liked how it incorporated the video game aspects of it per se, but a lot of I think one thing that a lot of video game properties mistake or don't do right is they try to stop the movie for references that you don't necessarily that don't fit in tie in with the actual story. But what you said with Sonic did very well is the movie didn't stop for these other things. No, it just incorporated as part of the movie. There's a point in the movie where you kind of go through this maze, and I'm like, this is literally like a level from the game in different aspects, but it isn't like stopping the movie for a second. And it's like, holy smokes, this is like, like it just goes on and goes through. I think in a trailer they show that the Jam Marsden's character, who plays Sonic's pseudo father friend type individual, has the old Sonic ringtone, the ringtone for like the Sonic theme song. Again, this film was going to ring, but it wasn't like the movie took an additional 10 to 20 seconds for us just to listen to the thing. It was a brief little moment, and it really was a big crowd pleaser. And like you said, it's made a lot of money. So I know they're going to make a third one pretty much, and that Knuckles is going to get his own Paramount Plus show. So it seems like it's the Sonic universe they're all in on at Paramount.
Yeah. I especially like that final battle. Like, you can talk spoilers, I don't care. Like, I'll put a spoiler warning and stuff like that. But yeah, that final battle, it's just like you said, it's just like one of those levels, because you're in the plane and you're flying around. You got to take out like different parts of the robot. And you got to figure out like where the weakness is. And even with that cliffhanger, I wasn't expecting Shadow to show up right at the end like that. So that was a good way to like lead into the next movie. They're kind of doing what the MCU did. Like the last few seconds, they're like, oh, and this, and it's like, oh my god.
Yeah, they're definitely. I would say these Sonic movies take very much the MCU formula of style of movie. And they're kind of one of the first studios and franchises or something that is able to do it pretty successfully. Like I wouldn't be surprised if somebody on the writing team there had some type of affiliation with Marvel Studios, because not just like with how they handle the post-credit scenes in both movies. The first movie, it was Tails. This movie, like you said, it was Shadow. Which excited a lot of people. I remember seeing that opening night when Shadow came on. It was like the rest of the theater just shouted out as if it was like an end of MCU movie type reveal.
But my screening, yeah.
But how they handle their stories throughout, it's very similar to an MCU movie. How they run their plot throughout in different ways, and how they're treating the characters and stuff. It's again, they know what they're doing over there with these movies.
Yeah, for sure. So what was your number 2?
So number 2, and I guess these 3 that I said are really my top 3 by a pretty wide margin right now. But my number 2 movie was Everything Everywhere All at Once. As they would say, the multiverse kind of thrilling story with Michelle Yeoh as the lead actress in it. But I would describe it more as a movie about a family trying to work out their issues together. This movie was made by A24. It is very, very intense and different in a lot of different ways. A lot of flashing screens. It's a movie that really makes you think about what you're watching and the different levels that goes on throughout and the different messages. The acting in it is amazing, whether it be Michelle Yeoh as the main character, Jamie Lee Curtis as one of the supporting characters, Ki Shu Young, I think is his name, somebody who was actually a famous kid actor in The Goonies and Indiana Jones, had probably his first major adult role in 20 plus years, as Michelle Yeoh's husband. It was just a well acted movie that told a really great story. And I think a lot of people might see it as like this multiversal movie, but my biggest, like, it is literally a movie where you have these members of a family and they're going through a struggle in life, and the movie is kind of about realizing how to get past that struggle of where they are. But it uses the multiverse style stories of different worlds and different butterfly effects and how that changes life to kind of show and break down, that actual thing. So I really did enjoy it. I thought it was a very original feeling movie. It was something that I appreciate, that a movie, when it makes you think about what you watched, and it's something when you go back and watch again, you'll probably notice 2 or 3 different things that show a little bit different throughout. Very well done movie.
Like that. Sorry.
No, that's kind of what I'd leave off with that. Yeah.
I haven't seen that yet, and I was really hoping to get a chance to see it before we made our video, because I did see your other video about it. I know it ranks pretty high. I had kind of the advantage here because I knew what your list was, but you didn't know what my list was going into this, because your broadcast here is like pretty often, right? That's actually how I got the idea. I'm like, wait a minute, he likes doing lists too, because I do a lot of lists and rankings on my channel, so I really am looking forward to this one too. And thank you for not saying too much and not saying,
Yeah.
like, it's one of those movies that's hard to talk about without spoilers. You know what I mean? Like, there's some movies where you're like, oh, I want to tell you this, but I can't.
Yeah, and all I would say with this movie, the one little warning I give people, I give it in my review, is just that if you're photosensitive, if you're somebody who's going to have issues with quick fat flashing lights, there is one scene 2/3 the way through the movie that is I'm like, how did this not get a Caesar warning? Because it was 10-15 seconds of just lights, just all the universes, whatever, just flashing through very quickly. But I look forward to your review and you going to see this. And if people get a chance to see this in theaters, I highly recommend it if you're looking for a great movie. And yeah, when I started making my reviews, I got the Regal Unlimited card here, so I can see movies, any movie basically for free. I paid $20 a month, which is a great deal. And I was like, well, what can differentiate me in different type of reviews? And I'm like, why don't I just make a top 10 list throughout the year and just use that, as my, because I don't like to just rank movies A through B, stuff like that. I want to give more recommendations of what I think somebody's going to like something, what somebody isn't going to like something, because everybody has different tastes. So me saying, and there's nothing wrong with that. So me saying something that's the best thing ever doesn't mean it's going to be the best thing ever for my dad or my friend or somebody else randomly out there. So I'm like, well, if I put it in a top 10 list, that gives people a general idea of how I feel. And instead of giving it a score, they can kind of see how I feel about it, while I just give kind of blanket recommendations.
Yeah. And that's good that you do that too. That way it's more diverse for people. It's more of a variety. And a lot of people are just fixated on their opinion, and then they're not very open-minded about stuff, like in the comments and stuff like that. And I like how you try to differentiate yourself with that list too. I try to do it with my videos. Like, I try to do different things and film them differently. And I try to do little camera tricks and stuff like that. I'm just trying to stand out, and it's cool. I noticed that with you too. And I like how you do that. It's one of the reasons why I reached out to you.
Well, yeah, no, definitely. But enough about me. What about you and your second top movie of the year?
Well, my number 2, I thought this was amazing. Like, it just blew everything else except for one thing out of the water, and that was The Northmen. I love this movie. It's a classic revenge tale. It kind of reminded me of God of War, that sort of thing, because even that 4th game took place in Norse mythology. So I thought that was kind of a nice touch. And I wasn't expecting as much mythology that was in there. Like, I'm a big history buff, and I'm really big on mythology and folklore and stuff like that. So I saw this with my parents, actually. They wanted to see this. I'm like, okay, if you want to see it. I was really surprised they wanted to see it. But as it was going on, there were some things that were kind of confusing, like the constant ravens. There's actually kind of symbolism for Odin, and they kind of work for Odin and stuff like that. And I just kind of explained things, and Valhalla, basics. A lot of people aren't into Norse mythology, so because if you don't know much about Norse mythology, it could kind of take away from the film. You're going to be confused. But aside from that, the action, the costumes, the set design, the acting, oh my God. Alexander Skarsgård, it's finally good to see him in a lead role, because I know him from True Blood before, but he's always relegated to that side role kind of thing. So it's nice to see him in the spotlight, because he really deserves it. He can act, and he can do the action choreography. He probably does his own stunts. Don't quote me on that, but that wouldn't surprise me if he did. Some actors do that, but oh yeah, Northman. What's your thoughts on that one?
Well, I'll spoil this here before you ask me. This was actually my number one movie of the year so far.
Oh, okay, that's a good segue.
So we'll just talk about the Northmen for a good bit here. But the Northmen, I really enjoyed. I knew going in with Robert Eggers that not to go off of the advertising for the movie as what the movie's going to be about. I remember just aside, like when I was, still around kind of my family and stuff, we went to go see The Witch, which retroactively I've started to enjoy a whole lot more. But going in, we were given all the previews and everything was like Stephen King saying this was the scariest movie he's ever seen. And people saying like, oh, you'll never see a horror movie as good as this. You'll never be so scared. When The Witch while it has some horror elements, for generic, it's really more or less a good character timepiece of a family living during the Salem witch trials in that era per se. So like, I remember my dad and me and even my sister being like, after like our first impression of the movie was like, that wasn't even like you had maybe one or two disturbing kind of creepy parts per se, but that wasn't what we view as horror, in that type of a way. So we were, at first very underwhelmed. So I knew going into the Northmen that like, they're advertising this as some type of action, the studio's advertising this as some type of action Viking movie. But there was good. I knew with Robert Eggers, there's going to be more beyond that and more nuance, a more personal story. And I think that's what this movie does so well. Yes, I think it helps knowing Norse mythology a bit, but I feel like the movie does a good enough job with the ravens and stuff like that you can get by pretty easily. I know the character mentions a few times the raven is like his father, and he even says Odin. I like how gritty and realistic it is. I know a lot of times people will say, man, I would love to go back to live in the ages of like Middle Earth, or I'd love to live in this time. And this movie, I think, does a great job of being like, no, you don't.
No, you do not. Especially if you're a woman. No.
Especially if you're a woman. And even still, if you're like, even as a man per se, like, obviously women have the worst of it overall. There's no, the movie just shows that a ton. But just showing how, short life is and how much your life is built on your own either legacy and namesake and your family namesake, that you make decisions based on what's going to be best for your bloodline, not what's best for your life. And I thought the movie does just such a good job of highlighting that essence and the brutality of what that world was like, and not romanticizing it like so many other movies and shows do. I thought Alexander Skarsgård had a great performance as Anthel, and Nicole Kidman as his mother had one of fantastic middle, and I appreciate this with the writing, a middle line sequence to him that make you think twice about like, is Anthel Skarsgård's character in the morally right? Like, yes, he's doing this for vengeance, but is this actually a good thing to be vengeance for? Is there a positive point to what his mother was saying and what these people were saying? Anya Toy-Jailer is just an amazing actress, and
so good.
she's just a super, like, she's not a superstar now, but she is somebody who I think is in her 20s that is the best 20-year-old actress out there by far. If you've seen her on things like The Witch, Queen's Gambit, now this movie, she just brings a very high, very high skill ceiling, and is able to convey and bring a humanity to Skarsgård's character that was shown not just through the script per se and through him, but through her performance as well. The movie was just so well done. The visuals of it was very beautiful. The cinematography. I truly enjoyed this movie a lot, and like I said, I was happily surprised by it. I know leaving the theater, not everybody was excited, because I think some people got that false advertising per se. I think if you go in expecting Braveheart, this isn't going to be Braveheart. But one thing I found funny though was I was like, man, because one of my biggest grievances with movies and with people is they always talk about how nothing's original nowadays. And one thing I found interesting coming out of this movie is I was like, because some people, I saw some comments online being like, oh, this is just like The Lion King, like putting like scene for scene. And then I did some research and it was like, well, Lion King's obviously based on Hamlet. That's like,
It's common knowledge, yeah.
it's common knowledge. And there's a lot of Shakespeare stuff, like a lot of movies out there based on Shakespeare, like
Oh, yeah, for sure.
like West Side Story is literally Romeo and Juliet, stuff like that. But it turns out Hamlet was based on the story of Anthol, the Norse mythology that the Northmen was based on. So not
I didn't know that.
so I
That's
find it
so
funny
cool.
that like we talk about how unoriginal things are and everybody just adapts and takes from something else. And like this movie is kind of shows an example of like not even Shakespeare, like the world's greatest like screenwriter, in classical era, even his material was used from, inspired by other people. So I don't think it's as much about of what's original and not. It's about how you use your inspiration in the story you tell. But yeah,
That's so true.
no, yeah. So like I said, I just found that interesting because I was like, well, I can see why this feels like Hamlet, and I could see it being. And then I did the research, like, oh wait, no, Hamlet was based on this story. Like I said, it's very interesting, and it takes
The other way around, yeah.
yeah.
That's so true though, because I've even heard like I read old interviews with Bob Kane about Batman, and his big inspiration for that was both Sherlock Holmes and Zorro. So it's just like you said, even Batman, he sounds like an original concept. He's not as original as most people may think. But it's all about how you use that inspiration. And I think that's a great message for people. I like how you put that. That's really good.
Yeah. But I'm interested to see. Obviously, I love the Northmen. You love the Northmen, but you didn't love it enough to put it as number one. So I'm interested to see what is your number one.
My number one was X.
Not surprised,
I'm
but yeah.
a sucker for a good slasher. And this is one of the most like original, unique slashers like I've ever seen. Like, oh my God, I have not seen a movie like this in a long time. Like, it's not since Scream, I think, because it's that original. Like, oh, and I love Scream. Like, if you haven't seen my Scream videos on my channel, like I really recommend you go watch those, everybody. But this movie, it not only just is a slasher, it's elevated to well, not you, but it's elevated because of the dialogue written. It's elevated because of the way it's directed. It looks gorgeous, like the way the landscape is shot and the woods at night, and even like when they do those more adult film type scenes, it does get a little gratuitous at times, but it doesn't solely rely on that. And I did appreciate that. It actually focuses on the people behind what's going on. And the horror doesn't actually start till like halfway through the movie. And I thought that was a nice touch too. It kind of reminded me of Psycho. And they do a lot of references to old horror movies like that. About halfway through Psycho, it just shifts turns. And then it's a whole different movie after that. Like after she goes to the hotel and takes that shower, you know what I mean? Like, oh, there's the references to Texas Chainsaw. There's references to like Halloween. There's even references to Scream because of how meta it is. And Jenna Ortega is in it too. And she was in Scream 5. I think I got her name right. She's fairly new to me.
You did.
Awesome. So yeah, just it's one of those movies. I rarely say this, but it's a perfect movie. Like I try to look at it and I try to pick things wrong with it, but I can't really find anything wrong with it. I've seen with the Northmen. Like I would consider that to be like a perfect movie. Like but there's just something about X. Like it brought it up a little bit more for me because my personal love for slashers and because I just grew up with them, you know what I mean, with all these movies that they make these references to, and it's just so different. It wasn't a sequel. It wasn't, like based off a book or anything like that. Like it's one of those truly like original things. Ty West had this idea, and now it's exciting to hear that they shot Pearl and they're gonna make another one. Like A24 doesn't usually do that. Like they're not known for their franchises, and they're kind of hit and miss. Like they did like The Lighthouse. That's another Robert Eggers movie. Actually, I didn't like The Lighthouse at all. Like no, that was not good in my opinion. But they did like It Comes at Night, and that wasn't very good. I think they even did The Witch actually, but I like The Witch. I have always liked The Witch. I thought that was really well done. But anyways, what are your thoughts on X?
Yeah, so I got a chance to see it. There was actually a movie that was fighting with The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent in my top 5. I enjoyed The Witch a lot. It's technically my 6th rated movie at the moment. I think it was, like you said, a really good slasher. One that I recommend to people if you really like good slashing movies. I always appreciate sometimes horror movies that isn't trying to make it a whodunit type movie. This movie, when the slashing starts happening, you know who the killer is right away, which is kind of a nice, because I feel like so much of horror and kill it, slasher style, thriller style movies tries to hide what's doing the actual killing and stuff in the movie until the very end. Where this movie is like when it happens, you're like, and you kind of know who it's going to be, but like when it does happen, like you're not really, you don't have to be surprised, but you just get to experience what they're doing throughout and the tension that builds. It was I really enjoyed it. I think, and that's it. Like I think if you're a slasher fan, you'll like it a lot. For me, a little bit the adult style film doing they do in the first half went a little bit too far.
I can see that.
But I also think it was important with how it was supposed to tell a part of the story, which is why it still ranks so high for me. Still, is because it wasn't something that was just there to be there. It clearly was telling a message for who ends up being the killers and what they're going through in their life, especially the one character. And I definitely, like I said, I've told friends that are horror films and slasher films that like if you can get through like the nudity and the borderline pornographic sex scenes,
borderline.
yeah, well I only say borderline because they don't actually like show the
That's true. That's true. It doesn't show that much.
Yeah.
It's not actual adult film.
yeah, but it gets close.
You see like butts and stuff, but that's about it.
but I'm like, I promise you, if you're okay with that and you can get through that, you will get a good horror part in the end. I will say that I think that they were. This is the only thing I recognize is I know some people, and there's people in my theater who did leave that movie a little bit before the killing happened because I think they couldn't get through the actual nonstop.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. I think at that point they were just like, okay, I'm just watching an adult film here. Like, what is this movie? But I do have, like I said, if you get through it, it's very, very unique feeling of slasher that I think does the genre very, very well. And it isn't too gory. Like I'm somebody who's not very big on blood, so like, it's not something I'm good with. If I go to a movie that's doing like a blood style stuff, I'll put my hat over my head or something.
My sister's pretty way, yeah.
And I was happily surprised this movie wasn't that way at all. And same thing with Scream 5. That's another shout that earlier this year. That was a very good movie that I liked. Again, it had some blood, but it wasn't like over the top grossness that keeps me away from a lot of horror movies. Saw was a series I just can't watch because I just can't take the gore in it.
It's one of my favorite franchises. I love it. But yeah, one thing I liked about X2 is the deaths and the kills were actually unexpected. Like you don't see them coming. People are talking, and all of a sudden someone just gets killed. You're like, wait a minute, what? Because a lot of times you see it like a mile away, like someone's alone in the parking lot somewhere. You're like, oh, she's dead. She's done for it. But no, this one's not like that. And it even kind of teases you too, like that one part when it shows like the lake looking down and it shows the alligator swimming toward the girl and it looks like it's going to get her. And then you get that payoff later when the alligator actually gets a different girl later on. Oh, so well done.
And I think that actually the scariest and most disturbing part of the movie isn't even a kill scene. It's a scene where somebody is hopping into the bed with another individual, and and to me that is, I think that was the cherry on top of the movie, telling the good message and paying off the first half that you might think is just filthy adult content. It does show a different message that happens, and to me, like the deaths, like you said, were great and unanticipated per se, and that was great. But I love that the actual horror and kind of like the disturbing part was the part that had nothing to do with killing. It had all the other motivations beyond it.
That's a good point. Yeah, because I think I was talking about when Pearl lies in bed next to Mia Goth. I think her name. What's her name? I can't think of her name right now. Anyways, yeah, but is that what you mean? Like when Pearl lays down next to the young girl? Oh, I know. There's some actually genuinely that's moments in this movie, and that's just one part. Like there's so many good creepy moments in this movie. It just makes you want to cringe. Even like when he confronts the guy in front of the truck, she starts like kissing his neck. He's just like, "Oh, what are you doing? What are you doing?" Like, "Oh, like what would you do in that scenario?" You know what I mean? Like, oh. There's just so many things that make me like cringe, and I don't usually do that with movies, and I can handle my gore. But even some of those stuff, I was like, wait a minute, oh, oh, but you can't look away because it's just so like fascinating. Like it's oh, so that's what I mean. Like this works on so many levels. I can't say anything bad about this movie.
No, hey, and that's awesome, and I'm happy that it has a good audience there. Like I said, I enjoyed it a lot. I'm looking forward to Pearl. I was kind of sad that I missed the post credit scene for the movie. I didn't realize there was a post credit scene that
They
was
didn't show it
supposedly.
at my theater. Sorry, but I waited and then nothing. I was really disappointed.
Oh,
My theater didn't have it.
maybe they didn't even show it on mine. All I know is I saw online somebody said that it had that, and I'm like, I even tried YouTubing it, but I couldn't really find it on YouTube. Like, oh well, that's. But yeah, no, I know they shot the movies back to back. I think Mia Goth too. It was the fact. I think the acting in the movie was really good. Like Kid Cudi, I think was in the movie.
Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Which is again, I remember showing it to my friend at work,
Right,
who's a big horror fan, and she was like, "What's the cast?" She's like, I said, "Oh, it's just called X, and like it's coming out in 2022." And she's like, "Well, is Kid Cudi in this?" I'm like, "No, Kid Cudi's not in this movie." Like, like no, I don't think that's the right one. And then I look it up, and I'm like, "Oh no, he is. He is the one gentleman in the movie." Wow, I would never expect him to have decent, like really good acting chops like he did.
Yeah.
But Mia Goth playing both Pearl and her younger character, I think was just really really well done acting. That might go unnoticed by some people who never see the movie, but I didn't realize it until the credits came that they were the same person.
Same here. I didn't notice until I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Because I wondered, like, who plays? Because it's obviously prosthetics. Like, you can tell it's makeup. It's not bad makeup, but just the way it's done, you can tell like it's not like actual flesh or anything like that. But I couldn't tell, not at all.
Yeah, but well, definitely thank you for inviting me on here. I can't wait to maybe revisit our lists and stuff as the year goes on. We're definitely getting a lot more movies coming up soon.
Summer's coming up. I'm excited.
Yes, no, same with me. I think we're getting finally back into a summer movie season like we've had, 2 to 3 years ago per se. So I'm excited for that.
Well, thank you for accepting my invitation. I do appreciate that you took time out of your day. We can talk about movies all day, so thank you very much.
In case you haven't heard, I'm a film critic on HorrorBuzz.com, and I make frequent appearances on HorrorBuzz Live, their YouTube channel. So I'll make sure to put links below for that. Until next time, I'm Mr. FLIXTER, and I just love motion pictures. Have a great day. Mr. FLIXTER.